My friends, I want to say to you, welcome back. We are here at Shakers live in the making. We've got a good friend of the house, Monica's with us today. Going to be talking about all sorts of funky shit going on in the world. Something like that?
Something like that.
Okay, good. Well, that's an icebreaker. So. Welcome home. Another beautiful day at Shakers in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's in the 90s already, and we're having a blast. We are fortunate to have Monica with us today in the house to talk about life, the future of Milwaukee, and some of the places that she's been. So here we are, Monica. Welcome, and cheers to being here.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. It's always a joy.
Our pleasure.
As you say, welcome home.
We have beautiful Cuban music right now. Let's talk about Cuba for a moment.
Yeah.
You've been there.
I have. So that's what I was thinking, getting ready for today. Unfortunately, my hair and makeup team didn't show up this morning, so I had to do that myself. But I wanted to put on like a nice skirt, wear some nice fun colors, and it's 90 degrees out, so it felt like I was walking around in Cuba, and here we are with some nice Havana rum and some Cubans. But yeah, I took a girls trip there last year. With 3 of my friends, as you know, the Sarah, Jenna, Christina group, and we fell in love with Cuba after coming here for a couple of years and decided to make that our spring break, and the spring break it was, indeed. As you can imagine, most people go to Cuba with a couple, or it's a couple of guys, or it's husband and wife, and we went as 4 very American women, and so it was definitely a different experience, I think, than most people would have when they're there. So we already had targets on our backs.
The Cubans as well.
Yeah, fortunately enough, I say I can speak Spanish because I majored in college, but it's pretty rough going 5 or 6 years now without any practice. So thank God we had Christina there to translate, which kind of gave us a little bit more respect and helped us be a little bit more edgy and dangerous when navigating through the country. But it was a blast. We quickly learned that the cigars there will kick your butts, but we spent most of our time just meeting people, talking with our neighbors, learning about the country. We got to go to Vinales, which was an amazing day. We got to go hiking and see the tobacco farms. But mainly it was just a deep dive into the culture, and we still had fun, but it was an experience that thankfully came out of coming here so much and being interested in the culture and the food and wanting to learn a little bit more about it. So yeah, tell me about your trips to Cuba. What are your...
Before we get into me, how about your favorite experience there?
Favorite? I don't know if I could pick one favorite memory. I think we had a Airbnb, and the woman who owned the apartment, her mother would come and cook breakfast for us every day, and they were so worried about us being 4 young American women in this strange country. So they linked us up with her neighbor, who was a taxi driver, and so he was like our he was like our adopted dad for the week. So he drove us everywhere. Thank goodness, because we had someone to trust who wasn't totally ripping us off. But we had a couple days. We did we were there for 7 days. We did 2 or 3 history days walking around the city. We did a day or 2 in the country, and we wanted, of course, the beach, because the beaches there are fabulous. So we did 2 beach days. And our first beach day, we got dropped off, and our host dad, as we called him, was like, hey, be careful. You can rent the umbrellas, stay out of the sun. My little white American dolls, because that's what we looked like. And he picks us up. It must have been 3 or 4 hours. We were not at the beach for too long. And we all get in the car. He's like, what happened? I dropped off bananas and I picked up lobsters. And he said it in Spanish. And so I knew enough of the key words to know what he was saying. And Christina and I were rolling on the ground laughing. And Jenna and Sarah were like, what'd he say? Is he making fun of us? What do we have to do now? And so it was just this hilarious moment. And then our second beach day, which I think was 2 or 3 days later, we're like, we want to go to a quieter beach. We want more shade. We're going to make sure we stay out of the sun. We just want to be by the water. And he not only drops us off at the beach this time, he apparently knew the beach manager, because everyone in Cuba knows everyone, right? It's a small city, and so you need to make sure to stay safe, you're right around those right circles. So he pulls us up to the beach, gets out of the car with us, walks us up, and is talking to the manager of the beach, who pulls over chairs, umbrellas, and he's like, these girls are very important to me. If anything happens to them, I will come here and I will hurt you, because I need to make sure they get home safe. And so I think that, when I travel, I feel very fortunate that I've made a lot of friends around the world, right? And that I'm able to go and experience things on a local level. And none of us have been to Cuba before, and fortunately, again, I have to thank Christina to the moon and back, because we wouldn't have been able to communicate and get the level of, or the cultural experience we did without being able to speak to the locals and hear their stories. So I think that was one of the most, astounding parts of that trip, was just having now a family there that I feel like I could go back to and call and stay in the same place, right? Or meet more of their friends and get that actual in-person experience.
Well, notwithstanding having an interpreter with you and having kind of a chauffeur as well, just the dynamic of being in a foreign country, really kind of isolated and alone, and one of the few Americans that was there really in the place that you're at. That is just a remarkable experience. And I really get off on everything that goes along with that. It doesn't matter where in the world I go. But the experiences away from other Americans, away from English speakers as much as possible, and away from just the standard cultural things, open your mind to so much, and I think make you a much better person.
Especially Cuba, because it is the place where tourism hasn't totally taken over yet. Like, of course, there are some different people there, but for the most part, it hasn't been tapped and overcome like you'd see everywhere else. And there's not buses of people flooding. And so I think that was one of our points, too, when we were trying to plan a trip there. It was very hard to find information on visas. How do we make sure we're staying somewhere safe? Where should you stay? Where are most of the attractions? There isn't enough information to actually figure it out. So you're kind of just going on a whim and figuring it out when you get there. So, and that's right. Their tourism industries aren't necessarily booming yet, but it's very important to them to make sure that people are taken care of, because it is such a, culturally deep and family-oriented place. Very hospitable. And right when you travel, you never know how you're going to feel, especially being a young woman. I always have to have my guard up. If you have a good head on your shoulders, it's one of the best places to go, especially now where you're actually seeing something so culturally different than anything you can experience anywhere else.
Much more Spanish, to me at least, than anything else in the islands.
I agree completely. You're forced to speak Spanish, and especially, as a rough Spanish speaker myself, I had a very hard time, because you don't have the English or the American influences on the language like other places, and so you really had to go slow and try to understand, because it's such a different dialect, and it's a deeper version of the language. But it's you never grow or challenge yourself unless you take those opportunities.
How about food?
We love the food. I think one of our favorite things we took a black market tour. So we were at a restaurant which was on the Malecon, and our waiter was this young, outgoing guy. He did speak very good English. He was teasing us. It was like, at the end of our meal, we had a blast with him. He writes his name and his number on a piece of paper, the back of his check slip, and was like, I actually give tours. I'm not official. I have to do this, not going through the government, because I want to show you the things that they don't want. They don't want you to see. So I'll take you to, the slums. I'll take you to where we ration the food. And so he showed us. The food was amazing. If we were eating out, it was always fresh, prepared. Amazing. Lots of fruits and vegetables, We tried to eat the local cuisine as much as we could. Our host mom, her mother, cooked breakfast for us every day. It was always fresh plantains and fruits and vegetables, and so we tried to eat as much of the local produce as we could. But when, the other side of that, when we were getting our tour, we go to the place where the food is rationed, there's nothing there, and he shows us the slip. We're allowed 1 bag of rice per week, and all of this. So you see, these people are so happy because they have this very rich culture, and they don't want to leave. But when we say, you can't just go to the grocery store and buy what you want, and it's just this very conflicting opinion from what you see at the restaurants being a tourist, compared to what their reality is. And so that was such a deep experience, and very humbling as well to see the other side. But I mean, the food is amazing. You can't get by that. But when you're paying, right, for us $10-15 a meal, which is nothing, it's what we pay here, and you're getting a delicacy, and knowing what goes behind that, I think, is really important when you're going to a country that still has a lot of communist influences as well.
Well, keep in mind, I mean, as I recall, the average taxi driver is making like $20 a month kind of thing. The average cop makes $20 a month. There are exceptions, of course. There are those drivers that are working for themselves that make a lot of money. You could get a taxi for $40 to take you 10 blocks, or you could, if you know what you're doing, you can rent a car for $100 for a day, and it'll take you for 12 hours anywhere you want to go. Yep.
Yeah, but again, there's not a lot of access to information there. So being able to plan a trip and meet those people, it's challenging. There's no easy way to do it. And so a lot of times just showing up, and hopefully you get lucky, hopefully.
Again, I think that's the best part about this, is that you are dependent upon yourself and your ability to come outside of your shell and interact with people from a whole different mindset and culture.
Yeah.
So, one of the times I was there and I met with a Cuban official, and we had been referenced there. I've been referenced there from a government official in Costa Rica. This is 2016. Things had just opened up, and I'd been there before. I've been there since, but 2016 was very important in many ways. So I'm there, and the Cuban official says, to me, in essence, Bob, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to open a restaurant at a hotel. And he said, well, of course, you should do it with us. And I say, naturally, who's us? And he says, well, the Cuban government. And I said, well, there we are. And I said, what about nationalization? He says, we have no interest in that whatsoever. We're going to give you a 20-year performance contract. We'll make it very simple for you. What you make is what you make. We'll take a small percentage off of that, and we can guarantee you three things. You always have labor. People are always going to show up when you tell them that they must, because we are part of you. You're always going to have food. You will have all the inventory you want of everything. Same reason. And then he said the last reason, banking. He said, we are the bank.
Yeah.
So there is no other banking system in Cuba. Everything has to go through them. And I thought, this is fantastic. Sign me up right now. I'm ready to go. And then, of course, they had a problem with the people and a little uprising, and it was time for Fidel to go. So some of the smart money in our government will tell you that Fidel has been dead since 2005 and kept on ice like a moon over a Parador situation. So what the Cubans generally do when someone dies, a head of state, is that they lay them out in state for 9 days. In this case, they caramelized him the next day because the ice crystals are starting to form, and he just had to go. So that was a new day. But those reforms that went along with that, and as Raul, who is not quite the visionary that Fidel was, took charge, and his objective was much different the way he handled Americans. So my idea was dead. And of course, the embassy is closed. We're one step forward, one step back. Played this game for a while. Now there's somebody new who's in charge, but again, it's not as open to Americans as it was for that brief moment in time.
Yeah, I feel when we went, it was when it was legalized, right? It was like a year and a half was legal. There's always ways around that, but we wanted to make sure we were doing everything kosher. And it was hilarious too. Our friend Jenna that went with, it was her first time traveling out of the country. We're like, great, we're taking her to Cuba. She's never going to leave the country again. And so having to jump through those hoops and still make sure that you're doing everything in a legal way, it's challenging when you get there too. The issue we had was exchanging money, and so there's so much misinformation around what kind of currency do we need, because they have two types of currencies. They don't like the US dollar, but the government doesn't, but the people do. So do we exchange to Canadian dollars? And there's just not information on that because the rules and government regulations are changing so rapidly, and it's impossible to keep up and know, how do I still, access this amazing country while protecting myself and making sure I'm prepared. And so I agree with you completely. There's no easy way to go about it.
I find the similarity to that and how the Cubans have this daily, weekly change and the landscape to be very similar to what we've gone through with our COVID pandemic here, because there's so much information which is valid today, probably not tomorrow, and much different at the end of the week. So it's odd to think about a third world country, because they are
Yeah.
a third world country,
Yep.
being on the same platform that we are in so many ways, or vice versa perhaps. And as much as you get away from things that we have in America, there is this commonality that takes place.
Yeah.
Not that we're going to get into a long political conversation here, but there is
Yeah.
that connection that is just there.
Definitely.
So
Yeah, like you said, when I spoke to you last, like the conversation was, oh, we're supposed to be open next week. Now it's TVA again. And that's just the environment we're in right now. And I don't think any of us are used to it, right? We've taken our freedom and our flexibility for granted. And it's definitely, being a communist third world country, there are a lot of similarities, and it's a little scary.
did you notice when you were there that there are statues, monuments, murals, all sorts of things for Che, and a small amount that I saw at least for Fidel and Raul, but it was primarily Che.
Yes.
As the guy in my mind who was, just in case this revolution goes south, it wasn't our idea, he's the guy.
Yes.
So, and yet he's obviously been dead, and now everyone's dead,
Yeah.
for all intent and purpose.
That's so funny.
But it just seemed odd to me that, here's our guy,
I didn't think about that, but you're right. It's definitely a lot of political tension, and who writes the story, the winners, and so they want to make sure that whoever was in the right place at the right time, they can tell their story the way that they want it.
Well, there were a couple of Lenin things up there as well, which I thought was interesting because of the myriad people you could find in the Soviet Union. Lenin's your guy. So I wonder how many people today in Cuba even remember Lenin.
Not many.
There we
Not
are.
many. Yep.
So we had one experience at one point that we were, in fact, I went down with a Cuban friend of mine, and we had just arrived at the airport. The rental car that we had rented 6 weeks ahead of time wasn't there because they had a shortage. He called a family member who came and picked us up and took us to the house of the cat who's in charge of all rental cars for all Havana. So a short conversation ensued, a large pile of American currency on the table in his kitchen, and suddenly he has a car for us and a contract, whatever it said, who
Yeah.
knows. And, sign here, here's this. I couldn't drive as the American, but Jose did. And now we're driving back to Havana property because we're probably, 7 or 8 or 10 miles out or something. And we're going back to where our little pied-à-terre is, on the avenue of the Presidents, I believe. And there's a young lady who's hitching a ride. So we pull around and we pick her up. And Jose said, you can't depend on public transportation. It might be here in 10 minutes and might be here 2 days from now. Right? Yeah, I don't care. So she's in the back, and we're driving, and there's only 2 cars on the road. It's ours going one direction, and it's a police car going the opposite direction. And they see us as they're coming, and they slow down, and they pull behind us, and they pull us over, but they're in front of us. So I'm in the passenger seat, the young lady's in the seat behind us, the back seat. Jose gets out, he goes and he meets these guys, a conversation, they're looking at me, they're pointing at me, pointing at her, and then he opens his wallet, and you can see he's pulling out money, right? So 320s later, they got $60. They make $20 a month, and in one, 10-minute process, now they got $60. Nice windfall.
Yep.
So he comes back. I'm like, what was that about? He said, well, they decided that you're the white guy, you're the spy, and she's a whore.
Yeah.
I said, they never talked to us. He said, it didn't
Doesn't
matter. So what they would do is they would take you down to the station, they'd beat you until you confessed, and her they'd just throw in prison for 3 years. I was like, oh, $60 well spent. Okay.
We had a similar experience. It was our first night there because we arrived in Cuba. It was late morning, early afternoon. Spent some time resting, walking around. We wanted to go get dinner, so we go out to Malcon, wave down a taxi, and being our first night there, one of the cute pink Cadillac convertibles pulled over, and these 2 men were in the front, and we're 4 girls, so the car can seat 3 in the front, 3 in the back. Get in, blah, blah, blah. We'll take you, $20. We'll take you to this nice restaurant. We know the owners. It overlooks the city. Then we'll take you to this place, only $5 more, blah, 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 X, Y, and Z. So we're like, no, like, we're smarter than this. We'll keep walking. And these men were very persistent. It's like, no, get in. We'll show you around. So we're like, okay, whatever. for $20, $30. I don't remember the exact currency now, but we go have this nice dinner. We end up paying for their meals, right? Not a big deal. It's our first night there. We're kind of just glad someone's kind of showing us around because we had no idea where to go. We go see El Cristo, which was beautiful. Again, this amazing experience. We are driving we're leaving El Cristo at that point. It was getting dark, so we're like, we'd like to go back. We were all tired because we were traveling all day. And our drivers pull over, and there's a bunch of police officers standing who are kind of like stopped and waved. And so the guys get out of the car, they're talking to them. And again, I feel like I've traveled enough. I'm a little street smart. I'm like, you just want to stay calm. We want to stay cool. But we also had no idea what was happening. Like, we didn't have our passports with us or whatever. You know, we're all a little panicked our first night there. We don't want to get in trouble. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't know if these guys who are driving the taxi are legit, what they are saying. Are we going to get in trouble for being with them if they're not registered? So all these things, all these rules that we don't know. And it felt like an hour. It must have been 10 minutes. They come back, and Christina wanted to make sure we were quiet because she was trying to listen to their conversation. But apparently these guys were friends with the cops, right? They wanted to pull over and show off the cute American girls that were in their car. But it was still one of those situations you don't know if you're going to get in trouble, and you don't really know what's happening because you, as the foreigner, non-native speaker of the language, they can say whatever they want to get us in trouble. And at the end of the day, too, right, they look at us with dollar signs, which is so sad because there's so much misinformation going back and forth. But it was, scary being our first night there and not understanding what to go, where to do. Also, lo and behold, we get back. They're like, oh, $100 to show you around. And that was something we had to talk our way out of, too. So it's challenging, and you never know when you're going to be put in vulnerable situations because, again, you, as the foreigner, you don't have as much power.
And there's no embassy there. There's no relief valve for you whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not recognized at all. So.
Yeah, and not to get into American politics too much either, but the comparison between that and what's going on in our world today in the U.S. is, remarkably similar in many ways.
So of the myriad foods that you had there, and comparing them to some of the things that I've cooked here for you, am I close? Are we doing the same thing? What's going on with that?
I would say, you know this, my father lives down near New Orleans. That city is very near and dear to my family. My sister was married there, so I am able to go there a couple times a year. I would say your cooking reminds me more of the Creole style in New Orleans than Cuban. Of course, there's Cuban influence in all of that as well. But the food here is remarkable. It's some of the best meals that I've had, especially in the Midwest where...
Do tell. No, keep going.
Oh, yeah, okay. Everything is remarkable. Pizzas are super easy. I'll do a little sales pitch for Bob. Super easy to get and grab and go, and they always are so tasty, and the ingredients are always fresh. I love, the specials you do. I remember coming here with my girlfriend Jenna, and you had shrimp and grits on special, and she doesn't like spicy food as much as I do, but it was so spicy, but it was so good neither of us could stop eating it. So we were shoveling the shrimp and grits in our mouth with eyes watering, throats on fire, but it was so good we couldn't stop. So, you always have new things on the menu. I'm happy to be a guinea pig if you ever need
Thank you.
samples.
Did you have a chance to get into the Ropa Vieja last week?
Mm-hmm. So I had the Ropa Vieja last week. It had this underlying sweetness in it as well. I think there was plantain and olives. But it was still a very solid spicy dish.
I had mango in the rice. That's why.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
So
cool.
That was very good too. But I feel lucky that growing up I was always a picky eater, but my parents always pushed me to try new cuisines,
Sure.
and so this is the place to come if you want something that's a little different than what you're used to.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. And
I'm a big coffee fanatic as well, so I love that there's coffee here, and it's always a fun place to hang out. I think you've asked me once, why do you like hanging out here? And my girlfriends and I love coming because you could go to the same places over and over, and here everyone's so friendly. You're like-minded, you're open-minded, so you can always meet and talk to someone new. But like you always say, it's welcome home. And so when you come here, it kind of feels like it's a cool place where you can just be yourself and you feel comfortable and cozy, and there's always something new to learn or a new story to hear, new drinks to try or food or whatever it may be. So I love the environment that you've created, and you're a staple for this business as well. So
Well, thank you.
yeah.
And much depends upon the clientele we have and how they interact with the staff. And the staff, I think, is I mean, I'm partial, obviously, but I think they're smarter than the average staff in town. I think they're more customer orientated, and I think that they genuinely like to take care of people.
I would agree
And
completely.
I think that shows in every part of everything that we do. And our clients, obviously, since we have a significant amount of clientele that's from outside the Milwaukee metropolitan area, they bring a much different perspective to this whole industry as well.
I agree.
And I really get off on that, so thank you for that.
Yeah, and like you said, it's you attract people from everywhere. It's a destination, and so you're able to get visitors and guests from around the world to come hear your story and your mission. So
If I'm not mistaken, one of the first reasons or times that you came here was because of the ghost tours, though, wasn't it?
I would say so.
So, what gives you an interest in ghosty type things or spirits, and why us?
I think Milwaukee is such a cool historic city. There's so much here, and so I think this building as a whole and the ghost tours here definitely tap into that interest in a lot of people, because I think we're always trying to look for something beyond ourselves. We want answers. We want to explain certain things that we've heard or seen, and being able to take the tour here, you're kind of able to do that, and you learn about the different types of paranormal things or things that can happen too. So it kind of gives you a little bit of education to be dangerous with like your own stories. I haven't done the Jeffrey Dahmer tour, the other ones that you have where you walk around, which are on my list, no doubt, but learning about the building. And I think every tour guide here has their own perspective on the stories too. And so you learn something new, or you get like a different twist on it every time, and you get to interact with them. And because it's very intimate, you get to interact with your tour guides and the ghosts, and learn kind of how certain things can stick to a place or a person, and kind of alter that history or that story. I think it's so interesting, right? There's always something new to learn, and we want to explain those things for ourselves. But every time I come in too, I feel fortunate that I get to talk to you or the bartenders or whoever my waitress is, and ask like, have you heard of anything recent like happen in the building? And there's always something new going on. So it's a cool place to come, and it just keeps you interested in learning more about life beyond yourself, which is always fun.
Have you spent the night upstairs yet?
I have not spent the night upstairs. I've been offered and have looked into it. However, I'm actually very spooked because I'm a firm believer in the paranormal and ghosts, and so it does spook me a little bit to actually pull the plug and stay a night in the Airbnb upstairs.
Well, I think you need the entire immersive experience, so that means you're going to have to at some point. My further thought, though, is that the resident spirits are really cool, and they're really happy to get the interchange or interaction that we have here. And I don't think anything really happens in a negative capacity, and the experiences that people generally have that are darker are because they've got something else going on. They're afraid of particular things, and I think sometimes there will be an entity that maybe is visiting upstairs, and they will draw upon that, but it's not like you're getting bonked in the head or thrown out the window or something like that, but just that you are going to be tested a bit in what your own fears are.
Not to give away all of your stories, but I'm curious, because I don't think I've ever asked you this. Has anything ever followed you home or stuck to you or any of your staff, or do most of the spirits stay in the building?
Most of the spirits do stay in the building, and during both the original ghost tour and the tour 2.0, we as guides are supposed to tell the spirits to stay here, that they are absolutely not allowed to come home with us. That's even more important during the seances, because that takes things to a slightly different level. To answer your question, yes, there have been a couple of times when things have followed me home. Always keep kosher salt at home. Nothing, again, untoward has taken place. We haven't had our heads,
spin in circles,
dismembered or something, so we're fine. But I think that the thing about the experiences that you would have here at Shakers are rather what you would have in other countries. And going back to Cuba for a moment, I spent 2 days going through a Santeria ceremony. And so the first day was rather innocuous. There's an altar on the outside of this complex. It's a rather significant complex in downtown Havana. And we had, I had one of the chief priests that was performing this ritual for me. And you are there, and there's the throwing of the shells, and there's the slitting of the throat of the chicken. There's a variety of things, sacrifices taking place. The second day is far more interactive because it's not just the chickens, it's the rooster whose neck is cut. They drain the blood, they keep the blood. It is my job as the person going through the ceremony to drink the rooster blood along with a bottle of aguardiente, which though technically is Colombian, it is a really coarse liqueur. It's called a coarse rum.
Okay.
So if you think about Havana and it's 105 degrees and it's incredibly humid, which is fine when you're outdoors, but now I'm in this cement complex and there's no windows.
And it holds the humidity.
And it holds, and it is there, and it's hotter than a mother. And after an hour of the actual ceremony, and I'm kneeling on this mat in front of this altar, and I'm chanting away, and I'm drinking the rooster blood. So at some point I'm mixing them together because it's a cocktail for me, right? Talk about Bloody Mary. And but my job is to drink this entire bottle of aguardiente.
Yeah.
So at the conclusion, after 3 or 4 hours, whatever it was, a lifetime, the priest and his novitiate come back in, and they do their follow-up type things, and they close off their ceremony there, right? So nothing follows me, except for this wicked jag that I got going on because I've now drunk a bottle of this high-proof rum, and of course the rooster.
Yes.
And the rest of the day was just
A blur.
Was just somewhere else to me. But that can happen here too. So obviously we serve a lot of absinthe here, and though it is real Toujon from real wormwood, it doesn't have the psychotropic effect that some people think it does. But you drink enough of anything, especially anything alcoholic, it's going to have an impact upon you, and you see things, you hallucinate, and it was wild.
That's a trip.
Absolutely. But it also, from an elemental standpoint, gives you a grounding and understanding for other things. Just like if you're out west somewhere, Navajo district, and the Carlos Castaneda type of thing, peyote is big out there. I haven't taken advantage of that or any number of other products because I'm kind of a control freak. But I can easily see this interest and desire to reduce barriers and to grasp something that's the unknown for us.
Yes, and there's so many parallels too between like the psychedelic effects and the paranormal and whatever our afterlife is, right? I don't know enough about it to speak on an educated level.
I'm glad you brought that home because that's what I was going for, so please keep going.
No, I don't know, and I've listened to a few podcasts that have, dug into that. I'm not educated enough to be able to speak at a level, but I do believe that there is something about like all the natural products that we have on our planet, right, that connect us to all these different things that we're not able to explain, and being able, right, and why we're so interested in being able to take those and feel these different things because there's so much happening around us. Like, right, the human body doesn't end at our skin. We have an energy level. When someone walks in the room and the energy changes and you can't explain it, right? So there's all these things that are connected that we're still looking for answers for. And I think it's beautiful and mysterious and scary and all those things to try to grasp them and learn about them and see how they're connected on a different level. I don't have the answers, but I think as a human, species, we do seek for something more.
The mere fact you're looking is incredible.
Yeah.
So you clearly have a comprehension way beyond the average person. And maybe that's why you're kind of drawn here as well. In my mind, essence precedes existence, and therefore essence succeeds existence, which basic metaphysics just means that when you're through with the shell that you have, your energy continues on. And if you want to call that energy a ghost or a spirit, I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
And I do think that, we have this barrier, especially in America, that very arrogantly, if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. And I think that's wrong. If you look at so many native people, so many indigenous people throughout the rest of the world, they're not modernized. They don't have the same hectic schedule that we have, or certainly you have in finance, that allows them the opportunity to get their feet dirty, to walk in the dirt, to commune with the earth.
Yeah.
And if you have a chance to go to Costa Rica, you should, because have you been there?
I have. I did a very resort. I went with my mom. We did stay on the resort, do your thing, but I'm dying to go back and see more of the country.
Next time, get away from that and
yes.
take like one of the volcano walks and get the right guide, and he'll point out all these indigenous plants, and from them they'll talk about what they do with them and how they could be, cures for different things. They can do any number of things you want them to do. We have a bridge, a connection with the planet that, again, in our culture, we don't understand or comprehend or care about because we're too busy. Hence the rise of big pharma. But to get back to that and be in that state, you're not going to have the issues that we're having right now from a race perspective taking place, because when you're in Costa Rica, it doesn't matter what your background, your ethnicity is. You are, as long as you're the same plane with everybody else, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And there's many places, in fact, Cuba's like that as well. If you think about the average Cuban, and if I were to ask you what their skin tone is,
it's all over the place.
You can't tell me because they're all over. You got the Spanish influence, you got the African influence, you got other islands, you've got absolutely everything.
Goes from as white as me to very black and everything in between, and they're all Cuban, right?
I want to get to, there's a portion, there's a little village, I can't recall the name right now, on the southern portion of the island, kind of by Gitmo, that was German inhabited.
Okay.
So you've got these striking blonde women with blue and green eyes.
Wild.
But they're several generations of Cubans.
Yeah.
And we are such an interesting people on this orb that's just going around here, and yet we are so xenophobic and have such hatred of things we don't understand. If there's just a way, and maybe it's through booze, maybe it's through Santeria, maybe it's through voodoo or something else, to commune with other people and to understand, or at least open your mind to understand what a difference that would make with things.
And I think, right, I said I didn't want to get into politics too much, but when I speak to my black friends, and like there's so much hurt and so much happening with them, and I'm like, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to make it better. All you can do is listen. And I think, right, being able to listen, and the fact that all these riots are happening right now, I'm having these conversations now with like my white friends and my parents and my family that wouldn't be talking about it either way. And I think that's such a powerful thing that, right, despite everyone's opinions and like all the rules that are going on of what you should say and what you shouldn't say, that people are having conversations. So that's the first step. And I think listening is just being, one of the best things you can do, and trying to understand and asking, how we can all improve as a human species, because we have more in common than we have differences.
Well, that's where it starts.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter if it's communing with somebody in a village somewhere or in a boardroom. You have to listen and see what their needs are, what their objectives are, and from that, you kind of have a feeling of where you need to kind of go to make that connection, right?
Exactly.
And that's not taught in B school, because at least it was when I was there.
It's still not.
It's terrible.
I know, and I think too, like you said, you like having control of things, as do I in my career. I like having my list, I have rules, I have systems. I'm very type A, and all these things now that are happening where you don't have control and you are like have to try to understand it. So, right, being young, I have so many things that don't fit to my frame of reference. So I'm trying to process them. And right, that goes to politics, race, whatever, traveling, paranormal, all of those things are just kind of like beyond our scope of understanding. And so I think it challenges us and it helps us grow, as a human species.
And then all the compliance things you have to deal with as well. So you've got the trying to get along with people, understand people, and help people with their just daily needs, requirements, family planning, something else, however you're directing their money, and yet you've got this other compliance thing that's on your shoulder at all times that, I'm not going to say it inhibits things, but it draws a standard, and maybe that has to drive the bus as to what you can and can't do sometimes.
Yeah, there's all, right, you said there's so many different vehicles, so many different rules trying to fit together, and how we act and treat each other, and no one knows the answers. And I think it's a beautiful thing that most people are trying to be better.
I agree. Well, we're kind of going through that right now in the hospitality industry, and hopefully at one point we'll be open again in Milwaukee, but we've been given any number of different criteria from different organizations as to what we must do with people, and again, at the end of the week, it's something completely different. So it's nice that we've got people that care about this in an administrative standpoint, but the reality is that reason must prevail at some point. And that should be the barometer, and we should have the right social mores that are going to guide us, regardless of race and color and anything else. We're all living on this little rock, and it's just a freaking rock. There's nowhere else to go. We got to get along. So
it's amazing to look at the videos from the SpaceX launch and how the astronauts were welcomed right onto the International Space Station, and you see Earth in the background. And it's crazy. I looked at the video, it was maybe like a 15-second clip, and it was turning so fast. And I'm like, we're just here living, and there's so much happening around us. And it's kind of scary to think about how small, my problems are. Like, I worry about if I'm going out of town, who's going to take care of my cat, right? That's not a problem. And when you see these things that are so much bigger than us happening, it puts things into perspective, and it humbles you. Same thing with traveling. Going to Cuba and seeing the problems that they have and the lifestyles they have, which to them is gold. They love their lives. They don't want to leave, but right, we compare that to our freedoms, and it's very humbling, and it's a beautiful thing to look at humankind and see.
It's good you mentioned that, because in my time there, and I talked to everybody, and people frequently there are looking around to see who's listening in, because you don't want to piss off the state. That's a mistake, right? But some people want things to open up with the U.S., and some people don't want to go to that. And I can understand that, because being in Puerto Rico, where every 3 blocks there's a McDonald's, there's a Burger King, there's a Pizza Hut, and people are not doing sofritos, mofongos. They're not doing Puerto Rican food. What they're doing is American food, westernized food, and much of the planet wants to be westernized to do that. Whether you're Pacific Rim or somewhere else, we have got those. It's not an outpost anymore. We have that specific business orientation in different places. And we've tremendously impacted things, and I think that we have to step back in many ways to find ourselves. And just like people in this culture, America today, relationships are fleeting things. If you're unhappy with someone that you're involved with or married to or something else, it seems that, and again, this is my 30-some years across the bar, people are less inclined to find a way to make that work than to say, I'll be screwing somebody else next week. I don't have to worry about you.
I am very big on goal setting. And one of my goals for 2020, right, because I am so type A, I like to ignore my feelings. I'm like, okay, what's the job? What do we need to do? What do we need to fix it? So one of my goals for this year was to be more in tune with how I feel, right? And just being able to explain that to people and hope. I think that's it's a very vulnerable place to be, because you never want to, and you don't want to hurt your friends by saying they hurt you. You don't want to let them know that you are sensitive about something or whatever the relationship may be. And I feel freer now being able to talk about those things openly and trying to find a way to explain them where I haven't before. And so, right, it just comes down to, we're always trying to figure out our own BS, but it's a challenge, and it's something that we don't have a rule book for.
Well, I would suggest, as I have been known to over the course of time anyway, that part of an issue here is that in the 1960s, late 60s, early 70s, women were so intent upon being equals, which in my mind they are and have been anyway, that they have really stilted things to the degree that I've said that in many ways men are obsolete right now. And the problem with that is that as we continue to grow forward into artificial intelligence and robotics and animatronics, all sorts of things, it's not just going to be men obsolete, it's going to be the entire human race is obsolete, because they're not going to need us or want us around, right? So we have to be very careful in how we approach the future and how we guide ourselves, not just interpersonal relationships, but how we look at things for other dynamics in the future and what we're going to be doing. And language is one of those things that I think it really slays me, because you have so many disparate people from so many different places that don't want you to understand what they're saying. And now again, we've got these sophisticated devices that can tell you those things. So you don't have to wonder about what that taxi driver in Cuba is saying to you or to each other.
Soon you're going to have a little computer chip in your head translating it for
absolutely.
you.
So, and part of that is this brave new world that's really cool, that Doctors throughout the world will know what your condition is. Oh, he's got congestive heart failure or something. This is how we have to treat this guy or something. And that will save many lives, maybe. At the same point, we as Americans, cowboys, are going to be giving up so much in order for this to happen. And there's that balancing act that takes place all the time in life.
It's funny to think about, like, how so many people have, like, Alexas in their homes, or, like, smart homes, right, who are listening to us all the time. I don't have one yet. I'm going to bite the bullet soon. I, like, done my to-do list for this year. But for me, on a small scale, I say there's nothing I'm not worried if they listen to me. There's nothing I need to hide, or I'm not worried. But it's the mere, like, ride of, okay, what's next? And, like, going down that path then, okay, at what point do I feel vulnerable, and do I feel a little worried? And I don't know what that threshold is for me, because, right, the technological scale is above my understanding at this point until it's starting to be implemented. And we don't know what the timeline is, if it's safe, right? Or...
Well, clearly what you do for profession indicates, well, many things. One of them is that you are a very intelligent, articulate, and astute woman to get yourself in the position that you're in. So the glass ceiling phenomena doesn't pertain to you. You've created your own destiny to that degree. But having Big Brother there at some point, that then is going to say, well, you need to work only on this. You can't do this.
It's then reverting back to, right, this very utopic, control-oriented, dystopian, society. It's wild. But I will touch on your point, like you said, I feel like being a woman in finance, which is still very white, it's still very male, it's old. So I'm young, so I hit those boxes. I'm not a person of color, which is also a huge issue in our industry as well. But being a minority of the first three, it's been nothing but help me get into the place I am now. But I get asked this a lot, especially because I love speaking to young women in STEM and things like that. I love those opportunities to connect with those young professionals. They ask what it's like. It's done nothing but help me get into the position I'm in now. But the day-to-day interactions are a lot different than what I see with my peers, my counterparts. So it's a different experience. And like you said, where you have to be, tough and push and fight for yourself and all those things that men have been doing. And so now we're trying to fit into those shoes too. But also, at what point is it going to revert back? Are all of us going to be kind of tapered back?
About the glass ceiling, my sister, who's 5 years older than me, ran the immunology and hematology lab at Children's Hospital for years. And she has multiple degrees. And then she went to law school. So she was first of her class, president of law review, and all these marvelous things. She does primarily health law, general counsel for a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
But when she graduated, I asked her how she felt about the glass ceiling, and she said, there is none. It's at my feet. And though that really is an old boy's network, just like yours is, but the opportunity is there that if you have a desire to excel at something, you can do that in this country. And it doesn't matter sex, race, or anything else. You can do that.
I agree completely, right? There's a lot happening that you don't have control over, but you can have a really good work ethic. You can ask for opportunity. Make sure your superiors know that you want opportunity, because nothing's going to be handed to you. You still have to work for it. My branch manager, she's a woman as well, and she was hustling in her role, thriving as a financial advisor, and there was a branch manager opportunity available. She was young, and when it was being offered to her male counterpart, she was like, well, what about me? And her superior, I was like, I had no idea you were interested. We'd love to have you as a candidate, right? So it's just putting yourself in those situations where you are part of the conversation, asking for opportunity. But it goes back down to just an old-fashioned work ethic, and that's something that's not talked about now, and it's not glamorized in my generation, and it should be, because that's going to put you in the positions you need to get ahead, is just asking. And it's funny too, I spoke at an event at Madison. It must have been a few months ago now, because it was before all the COVID drama, but I walked into this young finance org, it was upperclassmen mainly, and it was all men, and they were like, oh, it was so embarrassing for us to have like a woman speak. We didn't have any women in the room, and there's not that many in our organization. I'm like, you can't, like, right, you guys are doing what you need to recruit, and if a woman's not interested, you can't force people to be interested in this career path. It's not for everyone. And so I think there's a lot of issues with that as well, as if, right, you hire 10 people and there's 100 applicants and 5 of them are women, incrementally there's going to be less of us. And so being able to look at that critically and evaluate it, I think, is really important too, because sometimes in STEM careers women just aren't as interested. But I think it comes back to, right, speaking up, presenting yourself for opportunity, showing you're interested, and just working really hard. The glass ceiling is there, but it doesn't have to be as thick as we make it, which I think is a realistic way to look at it.
Well, there are more women today that are heads of corporations, major corporations, and certainly throughout everything else. And my personal thought is that we have too many MBAs today, male and female. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of way that we've gotten aside from where we should be in mm-hmm. business, certainly. But the opportunities are limitless for you. The number of female physicians and attorneys, and mm-hmm. it just, the highest levels of our strata, mm-hmm. federal agents. You can find any number of people that are there that operate at that level mm-hmm. that are not the classic, white male type format. Mm-hmm. And that's a marvelous thing about here.
Mm-hmm. And it's moving in that direction, right? Not as fast as all of us would like, but it is. And so being able to tune into that, think critically about those things, and think about how you're interacting with these other people is important. We'll get there.
Well, change takes time. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's important that you do change. Once you stop changing and growing, you die, mm-hmm. right? And we, as Americans, have an obligation to change faster in some ways. Mm-hmm. But again, everything is there. Mm-hmm. And the number of women who are governors, who are mayors, who are heads of things even beyond just, the corporate world mm-hmm. is fantastic.
Yep. And it's so funny too in my career, because I'm client facing. I love working with my clients. And I had a friend ask me, like, oh, would you ever want to, manage people? Would you ever move to an executive position? So you have like corner office and high rise downtown and like all these really like sexy things that we look at when we look at like finance and business. I'm like, I don't want that. That's not where my skill set is. My skill set is with my clients. And right, being able to think critically about yourself and what you enjoy is so important. Just because you don't have a certain job doesn't mean that you're better off or worse off, because what you enjoy at the end of the day is how you win, like your life, and how you enjoy and how you take the most away. Well, there's a
balancing act there for quality of life.
Yeah.
And we, again, as Americans, have somehow forgotten about that. Mm-hmm. Clearly at the 90 plus hours a week that I work.
Incredible.
I'm a poster boy for that, but yeah, cool.
Yeah. It's going back to traveling too. I feel very fortunate that I have had the opportunity to, see many different countries and be able to spend an extended amount of time there. I spent a summer in Peru, volunteering, which was the best learning lesson of my life. And I spent some time in Barcelona as well. And being able to spend time in these, countries where it's very you work to live, unlike us where we live to work, and right, trying to apply that to our own life, because as soon as I'm back in America now at my job, it's hustle, 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 and being able to think, okay, how do I appreciate those things of being able to sit down and enjoy a cigar with like a friend and not have to worry about that. It's challenging for us because we're so caught up in our own systems and our own routines that we forget to, just enjoy things sometimes.
So where's next for you?
It's a great question. I would love to go to the Middle East. I think there's a lot of history there, because I love first being able to enjoy the beauty of a place and learn about it. Also, it can be dangerous there, so making sure you go at the right time with the right people or the right group. That's something that's on my radar as well, so I don't have any set plans. But one of my girlfriends and I, we'd love to go to Israel and go to the Dead Sea. That's on my bucket list. Whether it's going to happen in the next couple of years, I don't know, with the political climate, especially the health climate we're in. So that would be higher on my list, I think, if we weren't in the world we're in right now. Other than that, I think I'm trying to pause and enjoy the community I'm in. As a homeowner, I'm tackling some projects right now, and so it's kind of nice to digest all the things I'm kind of clinging to and enjoy being at home and spend some more time with my family. I'm able to, my dad lives down south, as you know, very close to New Orleans, which I love. Again, I love the Creole culture. So I'm able to spend a couple weeks with him this summer and, just enjoy the people that I have around and not necessarily race off and travel the world, which, again, is very volatile at this point in time.
So your father's been down south for a number of years now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So New Orleans, as I was saying to you before, it's very near and dear to my family. My sister was married there. My dad retired down there, so I get the opportunity. I take advantage of the opportunity to visit him and enjoy the South, because I think there's a lot of culture and diversity down there, right? It comes back to learning and being able to, put yourself in different experiences and situations. So I do enjoy that when I can, especially working from home. I think it's given us a lot of flexibility to, spend more time with the people that we love, where we haven't necessarily had that in the past.
Yeah. So how much of your life right now, business-wise, is on Zoom or something like Zoom?
Yep. So it's sad. We're not going to have like face-to-face client meetings for a very long time, which is one of the best parts of my job. I love interacting with my clients and the relationships I have. So it's a lot of phone conversations. A lot can be accomplished on the phone. Things that need a little bit more detail, or you need screen sharing, you're walking through something a little bit more detailed. We utilize a video conferencing software. I like moving into the digital world. It's actually a lot more secure than doing things by paper through the mail, where you have confidential information floating everywhere. So again, I feel like being young in the industry I'm in, it makes me a little more dangerous, because I've been doing those things, and so I'm quicker to adapt. But most clients, I have to say, are very understanding of the world that we're in and the accommodations you have to make. But it's exciting and challenging and scary for everyone, but I'm sure you see this too with like your staff and your friends. It's just exhausting talking about the same things all the time, and everyone feels the same way, and there's no way to sugarcoat it, and being able to plan for uncertainty it's hard and it's daunting, and so we're seeing those same issues too.
The malaise, up until we've had the last week or so of other interactions, just the malaise with my clients, with the staff certainly, and some depression I'm sure as well, because you don't know when this is going to end in Milwaukee. You don't know, overall the entire world is suffering from the pandemic, but certainly us in the hospitality industry in Milwaukee are not able to open up. We're not able to have that simple interaction that we've been accustomed to forever. And it saps so much energy out of you. And I had this list of things I was going to accomplish in the last 3 months, and that didn't happen.
Isn't it crazy?
The best intentions, but I haven't gotten to that point to get those things done.
I remember the first month of this, I made a list of, oh great, I'm at home, I can work on all these projects. So for a month, I wasn't bored. I was still busy outside of my normal work hours or things I wanted to do. Then a month went by, another week went by, another week went by, and now I'm like, okay, I'm itching to get back out. So it's still, right, how do we balance being mindful of the global health crisis around us, our own mental health, which is another issue in society too. And all these things, like we said, we were wearing all these different hats and trying to fit all this into our perspective on life and how we process things, and it's hard and it's exhausting.
Well, not to get caught up too much in law enforcement, but I have long maintained that one of the biggest issues facing all of us in society is a problem with mental health. So now you think about people being cloistered away for 2.5 or 3 months, and now they have to go out. They don't have to, but they're now interacting with people, and they've got this emotional charge taking place, and yet they've got some depressive issues, and they've got their own mental health issues, and now you've got, to the best devices that they can, you've got the authority figures trying to maintain order. And it's just what a tremendous challenge this is compared to what it would have been 3 months ago.
It's the perfect storm to have all of like these things that we've been suppressing and stirring about for decades, centuries and decades, right? Now being cooped up inside and it's all you have to think about. It's ready for an explosion, and we're seeing that around us right now.
I published a white paper that I had found about Rodney King because I'm always looking for other stories that connect and what have we done in the past, because you have to look at the past, right?
To learn, yeah.
And I'm sure that most people don't take that effort, and they certainly aren't looking at what I publish, but I think that's illustrative in so many ways and instructive as to what we possibly could be doing to avoid some of the situations that took place with Rodney King. Again, post that. But then you go back to Selma, Alabama, or something else in the 1960s, these things keep coming back with us. Yet, in the meantime, there have been scads of people that have taken advantage of the opportunities here, that have gotten beyond themselves. Then they've gone to college and they have advanced degrees and they've got professional capacities. They're doing remarkable things that you probably could not have imagined in the 1960s or the 1990s, and yet it's not enough. So change is happening, but change doesn't happen quickly. And often I find that the change that does happen quickly is not necessarily good change. So
I agree with that. I think, right, something sounds too good to be true. It probably is. Change does take time. Even I go back to my career, financial planning. I feel very lucky that most of my clients understand that if you start young and you educate yourself and you're savvy, you're paying dividends to yourself in the future, and you want to have options. You want to have that long-term view, because if you have a short-term view and you want to get rich quick, or you want immediate change, or you want, $10,000 next year when you are negative 20 in debt today, that's unrealistic, and you're going to end up disappointed every time. So being able to set yourself up, what can I do day to day, week to week, month to month, that I have control over, right, to make those better changes for myself and my family and my peers and my neighbors, right, whatever subject it may be, you're going to have a better outcome. And it's sad because you don't get that immediate gratification. I understand that. I'm a high achiever, right? I love immediate gratification too, but it's also that balance of then having a long-term patient view, and how can we balance those things to accomplish whatever we want in life.
Well, that goes to being a list maker, because you begin every day with a list, and here's a weekly checklist, and I find I'm not checking off as many of those things as I'd like to. But at least I'm not like make molten cocktails, throw them at people. So at least I'm okay with that.
Here's what I did. So like I said, I'm very goal oriented. I like to have my goals or like my list. If you have a list for the week or whatever it is, try to do 3 things. 3 things off your list every day, and it's very attainable, because then you're not like, I'm going to save it all for one day and get it all done, because you won't. 3 things a day, and it's very attainable, and you'll be able to get it done as another type A person.
So you went to Madison?
Correct.
Okay. So how do you feel about schools like Mount Mary, which is strictly female, and you think that they offer the same type of advantages that you've had?
I don't know if
Maybe
I could...
not academically.
Yeah, I don't know if I could speak to that, because, right, I've only had my own view. I haven't gone to... like an all-female school. I've also been in public education, and I haven't gone to a private school, and so I don't know the opportunities that have been different on an education level if we're speaking to like young adults or whatever it may be, or families who are thinking about putting their kids in school. I think a lot of it goes back to your social circles. My friends have always been athletic. We've been in sports. For the most part, I feel like I was a chameleon. I fit into a lot of different social circles growing up. In college, I feel like now. And I think the emotional intelligence part of that is really important. I think just being able to recognize. And so maybe if you're part of a more diverse environment, you're able to adapt to that. But maybe my education wasn't as good. Maybe if I would have gone to a private school, I would have gotten to a different company, a different place, and grown in a different way. So I think I don't know. I think being able to take advantage of the circles you're in, and being able to connect with people and, share your goals and share what you want to do in life is just going to help kind of drive you ahead.
Well, those contacts with a Big Ten school are priceless.
Yes, I agree. No, it was funny. My father, bless his heart, is very sassy if anyone ever gets a chance to meet him. I applied, right, as a young Madison person. I wanted to be in the dorms. I wanted to be, center of campus, in the party dorms that were co-ed floors, and have that experience. And my roommate that I ended up having, she had the same issue. We linked our Madison emails to it was my AOL or my Yahoo, Gmail, whatever it was at the time, and so and there was an issue with the coding, so the emails weren't coming through. So I missed to put the down payment on my dorms. I remember realizing I didn't submit my dorm application in time, and just bawling and throwing a tantrum, which is at the time how I handled my issues. I don't do that anymore, but Matt's okay, you need to calm down first. We have a problem, so how do we fix it? How do we look at it pragmatically, right? What are our options? Which one of those is the best? How do we execute on it, right? And being able to look at a problem without throwing a fit and saying, how do we come out of this on the other end, right? So called around campus, got into private housing, X, Y, and Z. My roommate, who is now my best friend, who, the people I lived on the same floor with, because we had to go through private housing, I went to 2 or 3 of their weddings this last summer, right? And so now that's my peer group, and it's so funny. My dad will throw it in my face any chance he gets. Remember that time you were upset about not getting into the dorms? And so, right, it's Madison, I guess, going into that, you think about, okay, they do teach very good problem solving. You have all these different people who you wouldn't have anything in common with other than you're the same age, you're in the same place, you're trying to accomplish the same things. And so at the end of the day, these people who if I met at Shakers tomorrow, I may not have been friends with, but at a very vulnerable time in our lives, we had a lot in common. And I think you grow from those experiences of being right in a diverse campus, learning from your challenges, and being able to grow in those ways.
And there are almost always options to everything in life, right? So what are your views on the New World Order, the one world government? What do you think about that?
I do have to say I'm not probably able to speak to it at the level I would like. Like we said, we get so caught up in our day-to-day things, a full-time job, keeping up with the world. Being able to travel and seeing different places, right, and being able to push yourself outside those comfort zones, I do think we have more in common than we have different. And I like the status quo. However, I think to move in that direction it would disrupt a lot of the comfort that we have and the utility that we have in our own days and our own structures. But I think it's good to challenge ourselves to think of what that would look like. I don't know if it's the best solution. But I think that it's good to consider all opportunities and all possibilities, because that's going to make us, again, more educated and, a little bit more dangerous as we continue to grow and figure out what the best thing is for our world, right? It's a big planet, but at the end of the day, we have more in common than we have different.
I think it's comforting that a lot of countries have a much more advanced educational system than the U.S. currently does. I think that we have spent, as Americans, the last 30 years dumbing down our system as a means to elevate some people into it. We have reduced the standards, and yet to compete globally, we've got to pick our game up a lot.
We have to. I was listening to a podcast. It was this Russian woman. I can't remember her name or what platform it was on, but she was talking about how it was astonishing to her when she had this grant to move to the U.S. and go to college here, and was going to school, and Americans were speaking openly about how they didn't like math, or how they didn't understand math, how they didn't understand financial literacy. And she's like, we would be that's so embarrassing for us. Why would you want to admit that you can't understand this? So, right, from us, it's a different perspective of, we don't want to seem dumb, so I'm just going to admit that I don't agree, or I don't understand financial literacy, or I don't understand math. And for them, that's a power thing, we want to seem like we understand more than we actually do. And so we are so behind on those things, and there's nothing bad about not understanding something. I don't know that, I know enough about geography for what I need to, but at the end of the day, I can't tell you all the countries in Africa and where they're located. So, right, it's okay to not understand things, but to still say interested and curious is really important for us, like as a human race. And it goes back to the education system of instilling, right, what are we supposed to learn, and is it okay to admit you don't understand anything or ask questions, because we're embarrassed to do that. And when you look at other countries, like you said, their education systems are far superior than what we have, and where we get lazy and we don't want to stay curious and we don't want to, challenge ourselves.
The UK, Germany, Switzerland have a much better comprehension of economics than
Yep.
we do in this country. And certainly the Chinese have got their own thing going on, and we have to bring everything up. We have to maintain a better standard than we have been.
I think it's so much about competition too that we don't want to take the time to see, okay, what are other places doing well? So I think that may be a good opportunity too.
I think we've also done a lot of harm to ourselves by having these degrees that you can easily acquire via the internet. No classwork whatsoever, no interaction with a professor or other students. And what you've done is you have gained then a master's or a PhD or something else without that foundation behind it.
Yeah.
And I think as long as we continue to do that, as long as we allow universities to dummy down those standards, we are just going to find ourselves closer and closer to that abyss on a daily basis.
A lot of the conversations I have with my clients who are young families who want to, they're interested in saving for their children's future, whether that be education or even money where they can buy a new house. You see that a lot in young parents that say, I don't believe in traditional college. I think it's going to change. And I agree. I think the system that we're on can't sustain itself, and it's definitely going to change a lot in the next couple of decades.
So of those families that you deal with that are saving for their children or trying to put a plan together for their kids, what percentage of those still have children looking for a traditional wedding situation or something of that nature? And let me say, to preface this, we have done a really nice job catering weddings for a number of years. I don't do it anymore. And I really think that it's really a huge charade in so many ways. And that money could be used for a house or for something else or for a future. So how do you guide people with that?
Yeah, you definitely see an array of things, but for the most part, I will say the same with education. A lot of families are very realistic in saying, we don't want a traditional wedding, or we're doing a destination, we're doing it smaller scale, because those other things are so much more important to us, because they see how inflated the that industry is. And so it's from a planning side, it's just having those conversations, right? How much do we need? Where do we take it from? X, Y, and Z. But when you hear people's thoughts and what they really want to execute on, it's a lot more scaled back than I think what we've seen in the past. It's a lot less traditional. But right, like you said, from a catering side, or whether it be customer service, that's a totally different conversation. Have you seen, from your perspective, a lot of parties, companies hosting parties as they have in the past, or has it been more so because the economy before COVID was booming, or have you seen a lot of, private sector scale back too?
We had a lot of parties that were set up for the springtime that were
sad.
canceled, and of course we refunded that deposit for them as well.
Sad.
But they have not set a new date on things. And how can you in this environment? You just don't know. It's the unknown, right? And I would suggest that there will be a lot of austerity taking place, even though the T&E expenses are going to open up. And that was a huge boon for us for many years because, as you well know, much of our business is corporate. It's not from Milwaukee. We don't really... We're not better than Milwaukee, but we're different than Milwaukee. And a lot of the parties that we've done, a lot of the corporate gigs are in that same concept or format. But I think that everyone has to be somewhat more cognizant of what and how they're spending or planning for things in the future.
Yeah. I know that you guys are on social. Sorry, this is just my curiosity. I know you guys are on social. You do a really good job marketing, but from like a bigger marketing plan, I know you're mainly like word of mouth. Is that how you generate most of your business?
We excel at guerrilla marketing. So this goes back to 1986 when I first opened up. And it's the same kind of approach that we have to customer service. We like the interaction, the one-on-one interaction. And I find that getting other people who have had great experiences talk about our products, whether it's the tours, the food, the whiskeys, the cigars, whatever it might be, that's much more beneficial to us than just advertising dollars spent on something else, because those people don't have an understanding, they don't have the personal touch, they don't have the connection.
Yeah.
Monica had this phenomenal thing taking place, we should do what Monica did, we like Monica, we want to go there. That has value to it. Just reading something somewhere, whether it's a radio advertisement or here's a static piece, it's like, oh yeah, I heard about them somewhere. It doesn't drive the bus home. So we like the interaction, we like personal things, we like any form that is different than the normal.
Yeah, I have to say, as a consumer, right, of the restaurant, the ghost tours, whatever, the food, the cocktails, it's an experience coming here, like I was saying before. And when I have someone coming from out of town and you want to show them the cool things about your city or do something different, this is always on my list. And so I think a lot of people have that same feeling and that same, memory from coming to Shakers. So it's definitely, it works, and it's different than the other bars and restaurants in the community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. So where do we go from here? What's Milwaukee's future going to be?
I wish I knew. I think things are going to be shut down for a while. Like I said, I think that I'm not going to be back in the office for months. I'm not going to have client meetings in person for months, and I'm from a very big Italian family, and so that, touchy, warm, environment is something I thrive on. But I think it's going to be a while, and from a health standpoint, I think that's important, but from a person-to-person standpoint, it's going to be challenging, I think, for the foreseeable future.
I look at things like the new BMO building opposite City Hall.
Yeah.
Gorgeous structure.
Gorgeous.
But I'd have to guess that's going to be 50% unoccupied because people aren't going to be in their cubicles or their offices. That day has come and gone, and that's just going to be dead space.
I think from a real estate standpoint, now companies are realizing, we can't have people work from home at a relatively high capacity. Isn't necessary to spend so much money on hosting them in an office. Can we keep them at home? Scale back our price point on that and be able to invest it elsewhere in our company, like improved software or whatever it may be. I think it's going to change our world long term, not only right for Milwaukee, but
whatever we go back to, it's going to be different than it has been. And I think that again, it's positive because change is positive. At least how you approach it has to be positive. And I think that much of that Mad Men kind of a 1960s concept of being in that office is gone. And there's a lot of reasons why it should be gone. You don't need that daily interaction with so many people because meetings, I hate meetings. They are, by and large, for me at least, they're just, they suck the life right out of you as you just wire yourself through something you could accomplish in an email and a conversation have done in 10 or 15 minutes, done. So
I agree. I look at my team at work, and we hate having team meetings. Of course, they need to be done in some capacity, but as long as you're all aligned for the same mission, same goals, we know our process, you don't have to, you can spend more time with clients, spend more time, working on what your personal goals are and how do we execute things at a higher level rather than just having the same conversation in circles over and over and over. And so as society is continuing to move faster and faster, I think that's going to be, the world that we live in. We're all going to continue to, move in this more technologically advanced society. Maybe it's more separate, but how do we make it more efficient? And
Milwaukee, on another side, has got these beautiful things going on, like the Riverwalk, like the parks that other cities don't have. We got this beautiful lake other cities, by and large, don't have. And to get into a concept where it's more the quality of life working along with those things, I think is advantageous to us. So I think there's a great future for Milwaukee once we get past the two situations taking place right now.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like as a young person, I have to stay optimistic about my future and the future of the world. Of course, there's bad things happening all the time, but for the most part, I think, this time that we've been spending at home is going to have a lot of really good changes, and hopefully, most people are able to spend some time that they needed with their families, focusing on themselves and things they wanted to get done. And hopefully the world's just going to be, better long term. Of course, we never know, but I want to stay optimistic for my, future family and myself.
Well, we both spent time in Europe, and I think that one of the things that has occurred to me, whether I'm in Spain or whether I'm in France, there are shutdowns on a regular basis, right? So people are dissenting about things public protest is part of the way the country was formed, and it's, again, healthy and natural as long as it's
Safe.
not damaging or destructive. And I think that those are good things for people to have the opportunity to interact. But if you go back to Europe in the 1940s, obviously, they had shortages that lasted for years and deprivations that took forever. So this little thing that we're going through with COVID, 3 months in, 3 or 6 or 9 months more, is rather small potatoes in the course of human existence, and certainly in the course of our own existence as well. And if we just had the right leaders in the right place that could help us to guide us towards the future, I think that would be a marvelous thing.
I agree, and like you said, history is cyclical. Like, this isn't the first time we've seen anything like this, and how do we, promote long-term change that, is bettering all of the people around us and ourselves and our businesses. Hopefully we'll get there, and it's going to happen again. It's whether it be in 10 years, 20, 30, 40, none of us know that. And so just being optimistic and being able to, connect to your loved ones and your friends and your family, and at the end of the day, just continuing to improve ourselves in those relationships.
So as a successful, intelligent, and articulate young woman, would you consider politics at all?
I say this about my career: I love what I'm doing, but I have the right to change my mind about anything. I don't see politics in my future. Not to say it's not a great opportunity, and there's a lot of areas that need help, because I think we do need more people who, aren't at either end of the spectrum, who kind of represent this majority middle group in office. I don't see that for myself. However, I would not rule it out if we get to a place where I feel like change is needed and no one else is there. But I love what I'm doing. I don't see myself moving into a different career path. But again, reserve the right to change my mind.
Cool.
Yeah.
I would say that for those societies, those governments, whether it's going to be on a city level, municipal level, or it's going to be something larger, those entities that are controlled by women, administered by women, seem to run more efficiently and much more smoothly.
Yeah. And like
much different dynamic.
Yeah, like you said, it's not whether it needs to be all men or all women. It's a good mix. You need like a healthy mix of different mindsets and different thinking people and different age groups and races, and that's how societies thrive. That's how businesses thrive. And so, again, it would be nice if you could snap your fingers and have that perfect world and that perfect system, but it's going to take some time. So, again, I like to think we're moving in the right direction. Whether you agree with me, disagree with me, I don't really care, but I want to stay optimistic about where we're going as a world.
Optimism is a nice way to end this. This has been a thrilling and insightful couple of hours, I guess, that we're into this thing.
Yeah,
so.
I feel like long overdue. I feel like I come here and I get to, shoot the shit with you every once in a while. But this has been an honor. So thank you for having me in right now, especially during this difficult time. And, I'll be a forever client, a forever customer.
My privilege, and look forward to perhaps another chat somewhere down the line.
Thanks, Bob.
Monica, thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.